Richard Brooks of Private Eye, author of the special report, Prophets of Doom, is still with us. I've even got a caller. I'll share. David will be on in just a second. Before that, how hard or easy is it to get answers to the questions that you're asking? How much is still shrouded in secrecy or shadows?
Yeah, most of it. I would say, at a guess, 90% is secret. You can see some companies' accounts, but when you try to get behind them, there's no information. So, for example, taking the case of Andrew Mills, who got 32 million commission, I only know that from a leak.
Right.
There are loads of these that we don't know about. All you see in a company accounts are its final, its bottom line after it's paid commissions like that. So
you don't know how it breaks down.
Yeah, you don't know that. So all you would see with Ayanda is that it made 20 million. In fact, we know that was after commissions of 32 million and another one of 12 million. So it actually made the men behind it actually made about 64 million.
Wow.
So that's one reason for secrecy. Other is that lots of companies are classified as small, even though they're making tens or hundreds of millions, and they don't have to publish full accounts. Another is that the government just don't want to open up about it. They don't want to publish details of these contracts. So they don't want to, when they buy masks or gowns or whatever, they don't want to say how much they're paying for each one to each company. The biggest contracts around, not for PPE, but for lateral flow tests with Innova, this Las Vegas registered company, 3.3 billion, I think, so far. We've no idea what they're paying per test. We're not, and I've asked repeatedly, and we're not allowed to know that.
Why not? What do they say? Commercial sensitivity.
They say commercial sensitivity. Now, the point there is that information is only supposed to be commercially sensitive because competition is supposed to operate.
Yes,
and if you release the information, it stops competition working properly. But there is no competition here.
Which is part of the problem.
So that's the problem.
It's Kafkaesque, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And more alarming still, I think, is the official indifference. I tried again and again talking to the Department of Health about this. What did you do? How did you monitor how much these firms were making? They just won't reply.
And there's no pressure coming from their political masters to compel them to reply. I'm just glancing at the clock. We're going to run out of time. I knew this would happen. So I've got a few calls, but I'm probably only going to have time for one. So I'll apologise to Adam in advance and go to David, who's in Enfield. David, what would you like to ask Richard?
Yeah, good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Hope you're well.
Hi, afternoon.
Richard, what response, if any, have you had from the Public Accounts Committee and the National Audit Office, who are supposed to be the guardians of our tax expenditure?
Great question. Thank God one of us knows what they're talking about, David.
Yeah.
To your revelations, and do you think that the government should order either a judicial inquiry into this matter or, in fact, a commission of forensic audit of all this expenditure?
Very pertinent question. I actually tried all along the line to get some answers on this. The National Audit Office have done reports on COVID procurement generally and one on PPE, but they were pretty broad brush, and there was no mention at all of profits that the suppliers were making, or never mind profiteering, even though the head of the National Audit Office was interviewed on Panorama a few months ago. And he said, look, there are clearly people making a lot of money from this, but they've showed no interest in finding out who. I tried to share my findings with the National Audit Office. I said, look, I've found out some really striking stuff about who's making what, how much, but they weren't interested. They didn't want to talk. So, it's really time that I think that those spending watchdogs got their act together and did really what you were hinting at the end of your question there, set this out publicly. What we need is a full public open book, as they call it in the business style of accounting, to show who was paid what, how much profit that turned into, where they made it, what commissions they paid, how much tax they paid on it. That's another question which we haven't gone into at all today, but there's a fair bit of tax dodging going on. We need all that out in the open. I think, obviously, as I point out at the end of this report, lots of people made huge sacrifices during the pandemic, and I think the least they deserve is that we know who was paid how much. Just to add grist to the mill, some of these disparities in business as usual, so companies that were posting annual profits of £0.2 million or £0.7 million,
suddenly made £16.4 million in the first period of COVID, or £14 million respectively. I mean, this is, you want the dots to be joined together.
Yeah. I mean, yes,
Seems
you need
reasonable.
all that exposed because, what those companies just carried on marking up at very high levels what they were selling to the government, even though everybody knows that when you buy something in bulk, you pay a bit less per item.
Sure.
Well, on a lot of these contracts, the government was buying massively in bulk. So it was multiplying these companies' turnovers by, factors of 100 or 1,000 even. But they were still applying the same, 100% markup or whatever on this stock. And that just...
I mean, no one in government was
saying
saying stop. And civil servants were...
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I don't want to give all the details of the report. People can still go out and buy it. Although the new edition comes out on Wednesday. What can we look out for in that, Richard?
Well, we have a bit of a follow-up on Wednesday. We're looking at what private hospitals have made in the pandemic, because they were, as you know, they were kind of put on standby to help out take COVID patients. It turns out they took very, very few. They were still paid vast amounts of money, often, half their typical annual income. They've also made significant profits. Their values have increased on the stock market. And now, because of the pandemic, and the backlog in other procedures that's built up, the 5 million patient backlog, they've been given massive contracts to deal with that. So it's a real
it's just bad business.
great each way bet for the private hospitals.